most of the missiles are actually in Nebraska, and the 341st based out of Great Falls, Montana, Malmstrom Air Force Base. So we got a little less than 400 missiles now. We had 1,000 back in my day.
Yeah.
And they're all the Minuteman Gs, the top of the line. That's the good news. Bad news is they're 50 years old. And the launch control centers are 60 years old.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Now, the launch control centers were modified about 27 years ago. So what you see today is not what they look like.
Okay.
They still have 2 officers in them, usually a captain and a lieutenant, sometimes 2 lieutenants. But they sit side by side now, which is a lot better for crew coordination. As you're going to see downstairs, the commander's back was to his deputy, and they were 12 feet apart. And they each had 1 key. Well, now they each have 2 keys because they're so close together. That separation, those keys had to be turned within 2 seconds of each other. So that was a protection against 2 crazies in 2 separate capsules bashing their partners in the head and starting World War III.
Right.
Well, nowadays, unless you can levitate and you've got real talented toes, you're not going to get those 4 keys turned at the same time. Outside, you got your day room here. This is where your on-duty folks could eat dinner with the off-duty folks, maybe have a game of Battleship going. The Navy guys think that's very, very humorous.
That's funny.
They mentioned the 1 channel on the TV until they got the 200 channels, and they could argue over those. That came in 5 years before they shut it down. We're kind of like an Air Force Motel 6. We had 21 beds here for 8 people. So the reason we overbuilt it was because we might have contractors out here that needed to stay here, not send them back to the base or back to Rapid City every night, you know. And also your maintainers had only 16 hours from the time they were briefed in the morning until they had to be debriefing back at the base. If not, they had to RON or remain overnight somewhere. So the facility manager, the FM, he was the ranking guy. He was a tech sergeant and master sergeant, probably 35 years old. The rest of the folks topside were in their early 20s, or maybe late teens, some of the cops. The crew was, oh gosh, captain and lieutenant. Our average age was probably 23, 24 years old, so we were the next oldest folks on site.
23-year-olds in charge of everything.
Oh, yeah, you bet. Well, it's just, well, you know, the thing is, the maintainers working on those nukes were younger than we were.
Wow.
And the cops were younger than they were.
Right.
Okay, so a lot of responsibility on very, very young people.
Yeah.
And you know, the amazing thing is, in the last 60-plus years, it's worked very, very well. There's a long blue line of dedication and expertise. The flight security controllers got their own double bunk, and they stored their M16 in there. Later on, they got M203 grenade launchers, 40-millimeter grenade launchers under about half of their weapons, but windows blacked out so the nighttime folks could get some sleep. From there on back, that's 3/4-inch steel plate sandwiched with grout. Okay, 8 times 16,000 pounds, but very finely balanced. This thing only took 60 pounds of pressure to get it moving and 10 pounds to keep it moving. A small child could push it open and close it. It was that well balanced. 12 pins like a bank vault, 6 on the side, all pumped in and out about 50 strokes on the high pressure pump there. And retract or expand them, kept closed and locked, like I say, except for meals and getting the people in and out. 1/4-inch steel plate followed by 4 feet of steel reinforced concrete. Now the rebar, the reinforcing bar, is not what the skinny stuff that we're used to. This is number 18, so it's a good bit more sturdy. A little snack area. We had a toaster oven, not a microwave, but you notice everything's strapped down. If you had this thing violently slamming around, shock waves from nuclear weapons would come through at hundreds of miles an hour and hard. So everything had to be strapped down. If we couldn't strap it down, then we were going to war, we'd jettison it overboard here and just let it rattle around down underneath this place.
Kind of like a camper van.
Yeah, right.
Just it. You got to do what you got to do.
Right.
Now, back in the old Minuteman 1 days, this is how we armed the missiles, by throwing the toggle switch, okay? Well, they changed that out in the 70s. They came over the enable panel. You had to get a code that we had no access to day to day, okay, to even arm the missiles. It's like cocking the hammer on a single-action pistol. You can pull the trigger, turn the keys all you want to, and you're not going to get anything but about 25 to 30 in Leavenworth for that. So that's that. By itself, that enabled us to have one person. Tim says, "Boss, we got to get in that safe." I check mine out and I say, "I agree." We pop the locks off. We grab our, each have a key and a set of authenticators. We lay our keys down. We each select the authenticator proper for that message, and we do this independently of the other person. We both agree it is a valid and authentic execution message. We're going to war. We don't have a lot of time to do it, but we have worked on this for months. I mean, we are like a well-oiled machine. First thing we're going to do, put the keys in the key switches. Put our seat belts on. Now, Tim has got items 3 and 4 to take care of. You got to arm the missiles, and you got to tell them which ones to go and which ones to stay. He dials that code in that we didn't have up to this point, flips the switch down, arming all 50 missiles. He dials in the preparatory launch command alpha, the PLCA there. It's a number from 01 to 99. It initiates up, light comes on, goes off. The missiles now know which ones are going and which ones are staying. We don't know. We're just going to have to watch. Okay. Okay. We also don't know what the targets are. Nowadays they do. They've got a rapid retargeting, the react system we call it, where they know the targets. We did not. We did not have the right or need to know them back in those days because whatever. So the targets were picked months or years in advance by what was called the JSTPS, or Joint Strategic Target Planning Staff. The Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines got together and decided what targets would be hit by what delivery system, what weapon, and when. The when being super important because you wanted to avoid fratricide, which is blowing up our own guys and gals, our own stuff, our allies and their guys and gals, to the extent you could. We're watching this hand-wound submarine clock like crazy because we don't want to miss that key turn time. That's a very slim window we've got to get those keys turned. Okay, 24 o'clock's at the Zulu time, so all the forces worldwide are looking at that same clock face, okay, plus or minus a few seconds. So that thing ticks down to 5 seconds before I call out on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark. We turn the keys. Hold them about 10 seconds or until that little green message transmitting light goes on and goes off. We release the keys. That is one launch vote. Okay? It takes 2 launch votes. We get that second launch votes. After that, the missiles are going. Don't even acknowledge any other launch votes. They got their 2. A 5-vote launch is not better than a 2. They've got the minimums. They've got other things on their beady little electromechanical minds. Okay. The ones that are going to go are going to go into what's called terminal countdown. It takes a little more than a minute to get them out of there. But 4/5 of that time is taken up with the missile getting ready. Okay, it wobbles its nozzles there, runs a test on itself. It's firing up the batteries in the 3 stages there. It's turning on electrical switches, turning off electrical switches. The last 10 seconds are the real critical part. And they happen almost simultaneously. The upper umbilical, which the cords and the coolant and everything that goes into the guidance and control, pops off with explosive squibs. Another squib fires and drags that whole mess of tubes and wires into a recess in that 12-foot wide, 80-foot deep launch tube. Missile's only 57.5 feet tall. It sits 18 feet off the floor on a shock absorbing device we call the donut. It's locked to that. So if you have anything happen before that, that shakes the earth. It can rock around and right itself and be ready to fly. Okay. About the same time, 2 howitzer shell-like gas generators fire, driving a big piston down, tied to a pulley and a cable about that big. It rolls that 180,000-pound door off, going south, sideways, on 4 18-inch wheels, so hard that it goes off the rails, over the rocks, into and probably through the fence, which is built to break down on those 2 corners. If you ever go out to Delta 9, look at the south corners and the north corners, built differently. Okay. When that clears, and only if that thing clears the launch tube, stage 1 is going to fire on that thing 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit down below there. The missile's on fire. About halfway up, it's got cork ablative material. That cork is burning like crazy. It's scorched 2/3 of the way up to the top of the missile. Very, very hot down there. The missile lifts off, it releases, it lifts off, lower umbilical separates, and it's out of there. The 3 stages each burn for about a minute, gets the warhead and guidance and control going in excess of 15,000 miles an hour over the North Pole. Delivery time 25 to 30 minutes to the target over there. 1.2 megaton warhead on ours. They're smaller than that now because the G models are more accurate, and accuracy counts for more than megatons. Back in our day, we had to make up a little bit by having a bigger bomb. Our bombs were 80 times more powerful than the medium or Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs. 2 of our bombs had more firepower than all the bombs dropped in World War II by all the sides. So very powerful weapons. Okay, launch commanders, 1 launch vote. Launch in process, 2 launch votes. Interzone security, that's when the upper umbilical's popping off and that door's starting to roll. When that door passes into that radar field there, moves through that radar field, you're going to get the outer zone, okay? And then when that thing takes off, you're going to get a missile away light. Okay, that means proof positive that's lifted. Make a line down there, so if we lose power, we know which missiles launched and how many launched. Okay? So get all done with that. ALCC-1 calls down, Airborne Launch Control Center 1, based out of Ellsworth, calls down. We make our launch report, tighten our seat belts, and whack. This massive pressure wave comes through and just smashes this thing stop to stop in here. I mean, this stuff is falling down and dust's coming down from not being dusted in 30 years, but we're alive. Okay? The Russians hit wall drug instead of us and destroyed the world's finest collection of jackalopes.
And that water, all that free water.
I know, and 5-cent coffee gone forever. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is the elevator shaft collapses, okay, and it's leaning up against that door. We're never ever going to get out of that door again. We don't have any friends left. They're gone. We have got 8 weeks worth of food and water under the floor here. You got to rip the carpet up, undo some screws, put some T-handles in there. Both of us heave on that thing, get it off. You got food and water down there for a week. You got first aid kit, flashlights, inflatable pillows, cots. There is an escape hatch. It's a psychological escape hatch, folks. I don't think we've ever opened one from the inside. There were 100 that were built. They've dug in from the top side. Okay, but if you want to come right up to here, you can see it. It's that orange, big orange round door up there, 544 pounds. Called the deputy smasher because that's what they expected to happen.
All right, so now we're over at the visitor center, and they have all the things that we saw over at the Delta One facility. Now, the Delta One is where it was the launch control, where they had control of launching the nuclear weapons. But here, they have a lot of things that are recreated, exactly what you would see at the Delta One. So you get to actually sit down and read a little bit more. Like, here's the chair that they would sit in. So it's pretty neat and plenty of information that they've got. So maybe come here and do the tour later if you can get into the tour. But I mean, we're still learning a lot of stuff. The Delta One tour was a lot more in depth of what was actually happening there, and this is more broad of what was happening during that time period. So definitely something to check out. All right, so we've been touring around, checking out all the things that are related to nuclear South Dakota. So we did the tour earlier and got to see where the people were housed that did the switchboard for launching these nuclear weapons. We went over to the visitor center, got to check that out. And now I get to look down and see an actual missile silo here at the Delta 9. Well, all of this stuff is within maybe 15 minutes of each other. If you're coming from the east, you're gonna hit the visitor center first. And then if you're able to get the tour, that's gonna be the next thing. And then where I'm at right now, this is the Delta 9 missile silo. That'll be the last thing. So those are like the three major things they have to do with this whole, nuclear missile and launch pads and, all that, the launch facility. But you could easily do this in a couple hours. Now our tour was about an hour and 20 minutes, but during the busy season, when they're crunched on time, they were telling us it takes about 45 minutes. So something to consider. But if you're able to luckily have that opportunity to just talk with the ranger, I would definitely recommend just, absorbing all that information, asking as many questions as possible.
Might not be any grown-ups around when the bomb explodes. Then, you're on your own.
Remember what to do, friends. Now tell me right out loud. What are you supposed to do when you see the flash? Duck and cover.